So Cyrus conquered media, okay? The media has the influence over so many minds and hearts and wills. If the right person is controlling the media, then that can create or destroy a culture, bring health or bring destruction. But also, what is toxic for one group can be healthy for another. And one person's appetite can destroy them, another person has the same appetite, and it's their destiny, and it accomplishes the greater good. That's just the way creatures are. It's why human beings are different. And the Jade Emperor placed the Jade Rabbit on the moon. The Jade Rabbit was willing to offer itself up, lay down its life for its friend. It was the first figure to resemble what Christians love about their Messiah, but even the sacrifice was not supposed to earn this Jade Rabbit. It was 100% true altruism with no reward expected. Not even the reward of maybe saving, no guarantee of even saving the Jade Emperor's life, because just trying to console the Jade Emperor, okay? To not knowing his divinity, okay? So that it is really, truly, if that were a true story, it would be the most amazing of any type of sacrifice or altruism coming from Jesus Christ. And then Cyrus was the greatest Messiah. That was actually a politician that the scriptures say was a genuine Messiah, because also he did not know the true God, and he was the greatest conqueror up until then. And the Jews called him the Messiah, and he was the king of Babylon, the most evil city, and he praised Babylonian divinities. He was the beast that the woman who rides the beast was riding at that time, Inanna the Great, mother of harlots. So, he was like God made an exception for Cyrus and said so many great things about him and helped him because he was the savior of the savior. He saved Abrahamic monotheism, okay? He was not his enemy. He was a peacemaker, okay? And so the skull here is interesting because skull, I called these victimized people that visited me Capitol Hill Queens, Capitol Hill Kings, before knowing that Capitol Hill comes from Capitoline Hill, where a wolf breastfed the twins who founded Rome, Romulus and Remus. And capital comes from the word, or Capitoline comes from the word the etymology comes from the skull that was found at Capitoline Hill, where they began to construct the Roman Empire. And the oldest dynasty in the world comes from it's the Japanese dynasty, where they value jade. A piece of jade was given to represent half of it the sun and half of it the moon. And that piece of jade and a haunted circular mirror is passed on to each Japanese emperor of the imperial dynasty. It does happen to be the religious leader who has had more people want to, without hesitation, die honorably for that religious leader than any other leader had such a following in his lifetime as Emperor Hirohito and a lot of those Japanese emperors, and it is the longest surviving dynasty in the history of the world. It is also the only dynasty where somebody who people wanted to hang as a war criminal for some of the worst war crimes, he had the greatest funeral attendance of anybody that had come prior to him in the history of the world, eventually being matched by Pope John Paul II. And both of them were saved by a magic bullet theory, which John Kennedy had a magic bullet theory as well. Hideki Tojo shot himself point blank in the heart 4 times, and at least one of those bullets went into his stomach, but they went into strange places, missing his heart. And as he was about to die, believing he was going to die, he apologized for everything and took credit for the brainwashing the emperor, not letting the emperor know what was really going on. And the emperor was also against the attack on Pearl Harbor, and the emperor did not know about the war crimes either and did not order them, so he was found innocent. And the emperor became a statesman and became the longest reigning emperor in Japanese history, and became America's greatest ally in battling, in Asia, which was most threatened by militant atheism and communism. And that was one of the reasons why the Japanese had become so genocidal, was to try to stop the spread of militant atheism and communism. And they were up against the Soviet Union, and the only reason they attacked Pearl Harbor was because Matthew Perry showed up firing cannons, which they had not been familiar with, and he was threatening that America was going to colonize Japan. So he never told them that he was just bluffing. They really believed that America was coming to colonize them. So, against impossible odds, they had to train their men to be monsters. And by doing so, it's like you train a dog to win a dog fight. You abuse the dog. You don't love the dog, and a lot of these Japanese soldiers were dying during basic training, and they couldn't taste their rice because they said their mouths were too filled with blood. And so, you know, yes, they were war criminals, but when you're treated that way, abused people can turn into extreme, irreversible, like a dog that's been abused like that and unloved, an irreversible type of monster can come forth from what could have been Old Yeller, beforehand. And then when Old Yeller gets rabies, the charitable thing to do is put Old Yeller out of his misery, but you got to do it with love. There's no place for hatred, okay? And so the war criminals are enshrined at Yasukuni's shrine, and there's a widow in a parable. And I'm not trying to convert anyone to Christianity, because I have my issues with some of the things Jesus taught as well. I like Cyrus. I think he was a good Messiah, because he didn't say you have to worship me or you're going to hell or any of this other stuff. He was a peacemaker. And so, but one of the parables I like, it's a woman who rejoices more over one lost coin than over all of the coins that are not lost, okay? And that woman represents God, and God made man and woman and in his image. So my hope and my prayers are that this prison ministry that I have visions of, that Mother God, east of heaven, land of Nod, Cain killed Abel, and he went to east of Eden, was called the land of Nod. So I believe in east of heaven is the a type of brotherhood of Nod, like this image right here. They have the Scorpio. Well, the Scorpio was assigned to the tribe of Dan, which was not included with the list of the 12 tribes of Israel in the book of Revelation. That's where Samson came from, who was stronger. No human being in history that millions believe actually existed demonstrated 1% of the physical strength that came forth from Samson. And like the Japanese kamikaze, Samson, he was a suicide who killed more people in a suicide attack with his bare hands, pushing a Temple of Dagon over with people on the roofs and on multiple floors and in the basement, killing more people than both World Trade Center attacks and Pentagon attack combined with his bare hands as an answer to prayer. So it was a God-assisted suicide. And the wolf is assigned to the tribe of Dan. The wolf is the spirit animal of the imperial dynasty of Japan, which belongs to a female, as is the greatest. The men who created her wanted her to be greater than a female, and Japan believes that human beings can actually deify and create spiritual entities that become kami, spirit, another alternative for God. And one of the animals assigned to Scorpio is the spider, another is a lizard and a snake, and the tribe of Dan was called by Jacob a serpent that strikes the horse at the heel, and the horse goes over backwards in confusion. So they can surprise, and you don't know what hits you until after it hits you unexpectedly. And the four horsemen who do the most destruction in the book of Revelation, including what many believe is the Antichrist, they all ride horses. So the greatest defense against a type of Antichrist would be the tribe of Dan, that most people believe is going to be the Antichrist. But the serpent was also the healer, so he looks like he's part of the problem. He would look like a bad guy, just like fascism looks terrible, but fascism was actually the government that God instituted in the Old Testament. He just didn't call it fascism, but patriotic, right-wing, conservative theocracy, and all the marks, if you read the doctrine of fascism, were contained. And it's no wonder it came forth from